Thanks. Well, for more on this classified documents debacle, we are joined by Republican Congressman from Arkansas and member of the House Intelligence Committee and the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Congressman Rick Crawford. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So you just heard that breaking news right there. 5 more classified documents found by the president's special counsel. Your reaction to that?
My sense is there'll probably be more. I mean, they're just not being very forthcoming in this. The White House spokesperson indicated that they were surprised that Merrick Garland appointed a special counsel. I don't necessarily buy that. I think probably it was done to prevent them or to insulate them from having to comment, because the answer can always be, well, that's under investigation, so we can't comment on that. So to some degree, there's a level of insulation being provided to the administration by appointing the special counsel. But I have some concerns about the special counsel, the parameters for this particular investigation. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these documents emerge in the coming days.
And I want to ask you about the timeline with this, because both the White House and the DOJ, we now know, found out about that first batch of documents in early November, just days before the midterms. Now here we are 2 months later, more than 2 months later, and only now this week is this starting to go public via media reports. Do you have concerns that this was potentially sat on at some of the highest levels of government?
Oh, of course. And it's always a concern. And, you know, nobody wants to talk about, well, we don't want to do anything that might affect the outcome of an election. We don't know what's going to affect the outcome of an election, but not bringing the information forward potentially affects the outcome of the election. We've seen this happen time and time again on different issues, but this is one that I think certainly rose to the level of being reported, and so I think they deliberately quashed that to make sure that it wasn't out in the public sphere before Election Day.
And then if we can pull up this call for right here, this was a New York Post cover earlier this week. We all heard the president admit that, yes, he did keep some of these documents in his private garage next to his Corvette. That New York Post cover, anybody vet this guy. Congressman, when you heard the president admit to Peter Doocy that he kept those documents in that garage next to the car, and then he said, well, it's not like I'm keeping them out on the street, what was your reaction to hearing that?
Well, look, there's a reason we have SCIFs. That's a secure compartmentalized information facility. There's a reason for it. And those documents are supposed to be in a SCIF. They're never supposed to leave secure custody. And so your garage, I don't care if it's under lock and key, as the president indicated, you're never supposed to have a secure classified information in a setting like that.
Got it. And then, Congressman, I do want to ask you about one more topic here, that being the debt ceiling. This might be one of the first kind of clashes or conflicts we see in this new Congress. We just had Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, say yesterday that the U.S. could default on its debt as soon as June if something isn't done about this. Are you in favor of raising the debt ceiling, and is there a deal to be made with Democrats here?
Well, look, this is the travesty in all of this, is that $1.7 trillion Omni they knew going in that they were going to have to raise the debt ceiling, but they didn't include that provision in the $1.7 trillion Omni. And now we're going to be forced to deal with it now under separate context. But the problem is we haven't done anything fundamentally to change the trajectory in spending in Washington. We need a balanced budget amendment or a spending limitation amendment somehow to curb spending. Because when we're dealing with discretionary spending and we come up with things like sequestration or go all the way back to Graham-Rudman's Hollings bill, they don't work. They're statutory and they don't have the long-term effects of actually changing the trajectory of our debt. And so that's going to have to change. And so if we don't do that, if we're not addressing the fundamental changes that we need in the way we spend taxpayers' money, I don't know how we proceed in a way that doesn't create problems for us with regard to our debt ceiling.
Got it. We got time for one more question. I want to circle back one last time to those classified documents. You're on the Intel Committee. What, if anything, are you hearing about what's actually in some of these documents that are being found? And if you guys aren't hearing anything, are you requesting that information? Are you asking for a briefing?
Well, Mike Turner is the chairman of the committee, so he is being read in. But unfortunately, our committee has not officially stood up. So we don't have clearance to go down into the SCIF and receive the briefings that we would otherwise. And that is attributed to the fact that we got off to a slow start in this Congress. And so it takes a long time to get these committees stood up. And it's a permanent select committee, so it's one of the last committees to actually populate and stand up. So it's still going to be another week or two, maybe 3, before we actually have access to that information. And so, but we need to move a lot quicker than we are so that we can address these issues that really affect the intelligence community writ large, but specifically this.
And the way it's going, we'll have to see if even more documents are potentially found in the coming days and weeks. Congressman Crawford, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
You bet.